This episode is about minutes 36 through 40 of Solo, a Star Wars story. We are finishing up the heist on Vandor with guest Klaudia Amenábar. Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Chrysanthi Tan, you can call me Xanthi, and today is all about minutes 36 through 40 of Solo, a Star Wars story, which starts with Viper droids heading their way and ends with Beckett telling Han about Crimson Dawn. Klaudia Amenábar from RuPalp's Podrace and so many other media entertainment commentary stuff is here. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me. It's wild that we're talking about Solo because I just recently rewatched Solo. Not because I particularly love it or anything, but because on my podcast, RuPalp's Pod Race, we do these things called Solo Watches, which are like when we do a live commentary track. And the first one we ever did was Solo, and that's why we call it. It's a little funny joke. And I wasn't on that episode, so I listened to my co-hosts do their commentary track, and it was very funny. You should go listen to it. But they did it back in November or something, and I watched the movie and I listened to them, so it's very fresh in my mind.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm also reading the current run of Star Wars comics and stuff, so all this stuff about Crimson Dawn, I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
Right, because Crimson Dawn wasn't it just introduced in this movie?
Yeah, or I can't.
It's hard to tell because now it's everywhere.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was introduced in this movie or if it was in the Clone Wars before that. Well, I mean,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're just it was a part of the Shadow. Ooh, it was a part of the Shadow Collective. Oh, now I'm a fake fan and I don't know.
Fake fan.
Literally.
Well,
so
Crimson Dawn finally gets named in this scene, but toward the end. Before that, we are just on this heist, which, to be honest, this scene kind of makes me tune out a little bit. My eyes glaze over because I'm fast train, snow, moving.
Yeah, I'm
action.
Oh, we're doing an action scene, which is not a bad thing. I usually am marveling at the cinema of it all. But I'm always I do that in books also, and I'm a big fan of the Thrawn books, and they do a lot of battles in there, and I'm I'm just gonna let this wash over me. I'm not gonna try and pick this apart. Which is fine because it's very well constructed, and it's meant to be that way. It's meant to be effortless, but there's a lot going on in this
There's a ton going on. And musically, there's a lot going on too. Well, sound-wise in general, there's just a ton of sound here. And we get some very interesting sounds in this set of 5 minutes. Toward the end when the coaxium drops, it's this very, it's almost like seismic charge adjacent or something. But we will get there. But musically, it's just there are so many key changes happening. There are so many themes popping up. There's drum loops happening. There's a lot of movement, to put it that way.
I'm wondering, I needed to probably rewatch this before, but I saw Solo in the theater, and then I didn't see it again for a long time. And then the last time I saw, the second time I ever saw it, I was showing it to some friends last year. And the first thing and that was post Mandalorian. And so the first thought that I had was this movie was trying to be what The Mandalorian and all the other TV shows are. And so I was far more charitable to this movie because of that. But this scene in particular, number one, because of the coaxium, and there's specific things, but number one, because of the coaxium, and there's a very specific episode of Mandalorian where they're doing the train heist with the coaxium that is so similar to this that I didn't.
It's in season 2, right?
No, I think it's in season 3. It's the episode where he takes off his helmet. Or no,
Mandalorian.
season 3 isn't out yet. Oh, I mean season 2. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, it can't be. I don't have secret knowledge. I promise.
I know
I
exactly what you're
just
talking about because that had a really interesting musical moment where I was like, oh, okay. That's like where dubstep came
yeah.
in or something, or like some electronic. That was, yeah, the music got
Yeah,
wild
but
right there.
it's very it felt very similar in tone, and also like there's action scenes happen in all kinds of movies, but it felt very similar. Not just because it was like a chase or they were on top of it or anything. Um and I also I've never played Fallen Order, but I have watched people play Fallen Order, and there is a part at the beginning where you are kind of you are on top of a train, and I would love to see the differences between those, but it was
Mm.
mostly like the scene in The Mandalorian for me.
Interesting. Before I start like playing some parts from it, is there anything musically, sound wise, or just like thematically in these 5 minutes that your ears or eyes are just drawn to, or that you find very particularly interesting, or like in a good or bad way?
Hmm. In a good or bad way? Well, here's the thing. I'm a big fan of Val, and watching this whole scene is hard for me because I followed the whole production of Solo and then after and everything, and the fridging of Val makes this not fun for me. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, like there's a lot of Solo where I'm like, you know what, a lot of lost potential, but I can still have a lot of fun. And this is the part of the movie where I'm like, I'm not having a good time because I know what's gonna happen. And yeah, that's kind of the general vibe that I'm feeling when I get into it. But that being said, um the other feeling I get like during this whole thing is often I'm like, this scene is really long. This chase is really long. It's really good, but it's really long. And they have a really long sequence at the end with the Kessel Run as well. And you're like, the pacing in this movie is wild. That's like usually what I'm thinking when I'm watching this.
Yeah, yeah. I think this this scene is this sequence is so long for me too. Um, I tend to feel that way about action sequences quite a bit, but this one feels like um, it is very beautiful to look at parts, and like
Yeah.
there are some really cool like when the conveyex is, I don't know, just the special effects there and just how it looks when it's traveling so fast. It looks really impressive and it looks really cool, but for me, I'm not. That's not enough. It's not enough for me.
I will. Actually, speaking of, now I'm just bringing up every train heist, but you know the train heist that it's also very similar to the one in the Clone Wars
I thought you were
with
going to say Book of Boba
Ventress.
Fett.
Oh no, I was gonna say in the Clone Wars with Ventress and young Boba, because I
Oh,
think that's more cinematically close because it's not just so we're having a fight on top of the train or on the side of the train. It's also we're going through all these cool
the
looking
tunnels and stuff.
locales. Yeah, this one and that one I think actually compare more like even than the one with the Mandalorian because they were in the same place. But like it almost felt like, with animation had to be like storyboarded. Like there's you're getting you're getting so much scenery.
Mm.
There's a better way to say that, but you're getting so much interesting scenery that's not just we're on the train, we're on the side of the train, we're in the train. You know what I mean?
Well, I feel like in this, we're not really getting in the train though, like
Yeah,
passenger
they're
or
usually on the
like,
back of the train.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas in the Clone Wars, aren't we like seeing the like we're seeing like Bith music, like not musicians, but I associate
Yeah.
Biths with musicians.
Yeah, I think they go inside the train I think at the end.
Yeah.
Um
But in
but
this case,
yeah.
like the Marauders are kind of like taking the place of Ventress, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I also say, well, I'm trying to also think back to like we're thinking about sound, like the experience of seeing this in the theater. Um, and when I came out of this movie, I definitely felt like I was like, as a deep cut Star Wars fan, as somebody who had recently watched all the Clone Wars, caught up on Rebels, whatever. There was a lot to love in this movie. My two favorite characters are Lando and Maul, so like
I know.
I was winning in some way, but I also felt like I did lose in other ways. But I still had a really good time. And one of those things that was a part of that was that like this was the first time where and you have like cool music. Ooh, you have like cool musical motifs of like Enfys Nest is actually scary. Like she was scary the first time you see and you don't know who she is. You're like, dang, she's scary. These people are terrifying. And I'm also a big High Republic fan, if people don't know. But something that people have praised about the High Republic is like, oh, the villains, the Nihil, who are raiding pirates, they're very different from the villains that we have, like the dark side, a fascist power, or whatever. They're very different. And there's people, of course, who are like, oh yeah, Lorna D's Tempest could have become the Cloud Riders, et cetera, et cetera. There's all this, but it is, to me, it's very similar in that like when they tried to bring in the Cloud Riders and Enfys Nest as like the villain, we find out they're not the villain, but as the villain, when you're first watching it, it was so refreshing. You were like, oh, it's a different kind of villain. It's a different vibe. And it's not just like, another rival gang. It's like, this is different. And maybe just because we all love pirates or something like that. But, and they make that very clear with the music. And I think that was something that like came across a lot during the movie. And so then when they reveal like, actually she's a teenager and she's an anti-fascist badass, you're like, oh, okay. That's very Austin Slay.
Yeah. There's a good payoff there at the end.
Yeah.
So I am not a fan of the Nihil or the Marauders as villains, as alt villains. I don't really like pirates either. So I guess that checks out. I'm like, I want like force people.
Yeah,
or like existential threats.
Yeah, that is. Are you a High Republic enjoyer? I don't want to spoil anything if not.
I am all caught up on High Republic. But
that's what I meant. Like, have you read it?
Yes,
is what I meant.
Yes.
Okay,
but some of them,
yeah,
I don't like some of it nearly as much as other people.
Yeah, I like it as a whole, is what I'll say. And then there's other parts of it that I love much more than others. But I will say that one thing that I know some people really liked about this in Star Wars, and I know this is a big thing in Solo because there's no Jedi in Star Wars except for when Maul shows up at the end. But there's no Jedi in Solo or whatever, and like I'm very much of the thing of like, okay, well, I could watch any other science fiction or fantasy if I want to see people shooting pew pew in space. It doesn't need to be. It does need a little bit of the magic for me to be Star Wars. That being said, this movie very much feels like Star Wars. So it didn't end up being a complaint, but that's one thing that I do like in the High Republic is that they're like, yeah, I mean, we're gonna have non-Jedi characters for sure, but
it's
like
super Jedi though, yeah.
Yeah, it's super Jedi, and like, and the villains or whatever, like, it's not just like, we're just pirate. Like, it does have to do with the Force, and I'm like, thank God, because I will just, if I want actual science fiction, I will just go read The Expanse instead. Like, shout out to The Expanse, you're my bestie. Anyways, I love Enfys Nest. Where is she? Could she please show up in season 2 of The Bad Batch? Or her mom, I guess.
Oh, well, that's a good segue for us to start listening to these minutes. What do you say?
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Rio? Yeah. Looks worse than it is.
So Rio is struggling.
Gotta patch it up. Maybe rest my eyes for a minute.
So we're hearing the gang motif in the background, by the way. And also young Han. All right. I'll stop so I can make sure I point that out. The gang motif is the one that's like, well, okay. I recently, like, I don't know why it took me so long, but it recently just hit me that the gang and one of the three young Han Solo themes feel like really related to me. And I don't know how it took me so long until this scene when I was like, oh, because I started getting them mixed up and I was just about to do that again. But the gang motif, which is like for Beckett's gang, is the one that goes like this. It goes like. And so we hear that like in various forms, not always in the same key or like the exact same rhythm, but it's this basic, that. And Han's heroic variant of his theme is like. So I keep like, I don't know, someone should make a mashup of those or something because they feel related.
It reminds me a lot of when people were talking about like, oh, John Williams, foreshadowed Rey being a Palpatine kind of deal. Like when they were like, see, it's similar. That one was a little far-fetched, but this one I like how they work in tandem. Star Wars does that a lot. I mean, scores do that a lot, but Star Wars does that a lot, and I do love that. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but this Han's theme was the only theme that was written by John Williams in this movie. Like he wrote like the one piece, and then the theme is used by it's John Powell, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, no, you're right.
Yeah, it's used by John Powell throughout the whole thing, right?
Yeah, you're right. John Williams wrote The Adventures of Han, the suite, and from that there are 3 themes for Han, and they're just like. There's like the heroic version, and then there's like searching, and then there's the searching variant. So it's like 3 things for him because Han, know, sometimes he's feeling heroic, sometimes he's feeling more searching.
Yeah.
And we get all 3 of them in the set of 5 minutes. So that's exciting.
Do you know, did any of those come up again? Because John Williams scored the rest of the sequels after this one, The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Do they ever come up when Han appears? In either of those? Damn.
I'm pretty sure nice. No. Well, this was before. Well, this was after The Force Awakens and after The Last Jedi already.
Oh yeah, The Last Jedi had already come. I mean, but they were both in development. I'm sure he
true
had already done, like Solo was.
That would have been like a little bit of a spoiler.
Yeah. I mean, maybe people wouldn't even have noticed.
That's true.
To be honest, they wouldn't have noticed. Anyways, yeah, I like that. I like the so okay, we have this scene always also is making me laugh because we have this joke on RuPaul's Podrace that we found this photo of a baby echidna, and we call him he. And that's our whole thing. There's some RuPaul's lore for you. And here's the thing. He kind of looks like Rio Durant. So when we were watching Solo, of course, my co-host did this, and then I did the same thing. We were like, oh, every time we see Rio, we're like, it's adult he. So in this scene, like, I remember my co-hosts were like freaking out, and then I was too. I was like, I can't watch adult he die. Like, I know that Han is like having his big heroic moment, but I'm very upset.
How do you spell he?
I don't want to watch him die. Oh, just he. Like the word he.
H-E?
Yeah, he with a capital H. All hail he. I'll show you a photo of him. But he really does look like Rio.
Oh my gosh.
So it's very funny when we're during this scene or whatever, because like Han is like, all right, fine, I guess I'll do it. Fine, I'll do it myself, whatever. And I'm sitting there like, no, adult he. The whole time.
Question: could you tell that it was Jon Favreau the first time you watched this?
I feel like I knew he was in the movie, but I kept forgetting. It's like when I kept forgetting that he plays Pre Vizsla and also Paz Vizsla.
Oh yeah.
I was like I have to be reminded, and I'm like, oh shit, it's him. He does a couple roles like that, and you're like, oh my god, I don't think I could tell when I was in the theater. But I figured I couldn't either.
Yeah. I don't think I knew who he was at the time.
Yeah, because
it was before Mandalorian. And
have the Spider-Man movies come out?
I don't know because I've never seen one.
Oh, damn.
So I just didn't know him at all.
Dang.
Yeah.
Like he's worked on like everything
A
from the time,
lot.
but him like actually playing the characters is always a fun time. You're like, there he is.
It's very
How
hit or
many-
miss with people.
I'm like, he's how many characters? He's played 3 characters at this point, probably more.
Probably way more and more to come. So in this set of 5 minutes, we lose 2 members of the gang, one of them being Rio.
Yeah.
So we are currently in Rio's like final couple lines before he dies. And just at this part where we stopped and we're starting to hear Han Solo's heroic theme come in, and it's coming in slower than usual. Actually, let me just go back so we can hear that again. And when a theme is like slowed down like that, it's called augmentation. It is expanding to fit a bigger box. And then the opposite of that, which we have also gotten in this train heist cue, is called diminution. Just FYI, like when you do the same theme, but like do it really fast. And here it's like kind of spreading itself out. It's going like, and there's like a couple note changes in it and everything. So, okay, let's hear that. Right there. And then again. See, it's pretty like buried in the texture. And now that's Enfys Nest. Enfys Nest second theme, which is like this. With the Bulgarian singers, of course.
So this is a fun fact that now that we're thinking about her theme, and this is where she's first introduced, right? She first appeared on screen here.
I think she appeared before. Although I have a hard time telling like which one is her specifically versus the Marauder, like someone else.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean the train, like this.
Oh, you mean the
whole
theme
scene, like the train
yeah.
heist in general is the first time she's mentioned before, but this is the first time we see her on the screen,
Correct.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, a fun fact about the development of this movie is that she was supposed to be like Val and Beckett's kid.
What?
That was, or yeah, I think it was one thing that was considered, and then it just became like, oh, her mother died or something. She was supposed to, and I need to look and see,
like their kid that they had either given up or like.
I need to look it up,
okay.
But like I believe she was supposed to be, and then they scrapped that, and it's interesting that we have all the things over. We have like the gang's theme, and then we have her, and then we have Han, and then we have her theme, like all at the same time. And that would have been very interesting if she was introduced at this crucial moment for the two of them. It just was interesting to me. I don't know. Anyways.
Well, when you say that you were like, I wasn't keeping up with development because I like to remain blissfully ignorant of development, but like for your line of work and for like the fact that you're a culture critic, right? Like you do commentary and like media stuff. What were you having to keep like on top of the beat for that?
Yeah, I have to think of like, because this movie was like in development, being reshot for like a long time, and then like the things we heard and didn't hear for a while. And I've worked in various kinds of jobs. But I've worked in entertainment news, and then regular hard news, back and forth, and then done my own critic work outside of that. And so the time when the sequels and also the 2 anthology films were coming out was a absolutely rancid time to be a Star Wars fan and on the internet.
Like worse than now?
Oh, far worse. Like right now is fun.
That's
like,
true. That's true.
Like the Twitter stuff, I'm like, okay, y'all have fun with that. I already survived that one. Like you guys have fun with that. I'm on TikTok joking about how Tarkin is gay, but like, sure. it was such a rancid time on the internet, and Solo, like, I mean, everybody knew something was wrong because Lord Miller, they're beloved, and then they mysteriously left, and it was like, what happened? I can't for the life of me remember at what point that was, and I think that obviously that was before The Last Jedi came out as well. So as this movie was coming, like, people were already like, number one, no one wants this film. Everyone wants it to be a Lando movie. And number two, every time we hear something about this movie, it sounds like a train wreck. Like, I remember when Ron Howard posted like his first photo as like finishing up the movie or like, oh, we just wrapped a movie. Everyone was like, well, we'll see. And and there were a lot of things that like Alden, there was a lot of like, oh, when they hired an acting coach for him and stuff like that, like people were like, oh, he must be doing a bad job, whatever. And like, I remember being on the internet and then seeing it and being like, oh, actually, he did a really good job. Like, maybe they hired an acting coach because they were like, oh, we want to do better. So there was a lot of like, I mean, anybody can talk. Like, there's a lot of like weird trolls and, you know, like there's a lot of like weird rumor stuff and clickbait shit now, but then it was far worse. And there's a lot of negativity, more than your normal negativity. And so, like, anything you'd hear about this movie, it was like, Kathleen Kennedy is ruining Star Wars. And the funny thing is, for me, that I'm not trying to be a misogynist or anything, but I was like, where's Lord Miller? Bring them back. So yeah, following the production of this was kind of wild. And also you found out a lot of things later. Like when we find out that Val gets killed off and stuff, and they were like, yeah, we based her character off of like her character design off of like Angela Davis, and like her actor was really excited to have a Black woman in a starring role in Star Wars. Anyway, she gets immediately fridged. Like, it was just bad all around. And then Michael K. Williams was supposed to play what's his name? Dryden Voss. And clearly, like, I don't know, people were recast or whatever, and then they did all the reshoots and whatever. So it was just a very weird time. And I remember like this is all like before The Last Jedi. So because there was a pretty big amount of time. So it was a lot of like, oh yeah, we're waiting for The Last Jedi, whatever. Oh, and there's another story about the production of Solo. Good God. Like anytime. But yeah, I mean, boy, was that just a weird time to be an entertainment.
What's interesting is that like for the scoring process happens like later than all that other stuff. So I'm actually really curious how the score like may have been different with a different movie, because that can change so much. I mean,
yeah. Well, I know with Rogue One, this is my favorite story because Rogue One is one of my favorite Star Wars movies, and also Star Wars just like scores that like Michael Giacchino was like, yeah, they handed this to me like 4 weeks before the movie was supposed to come out, and we're like, have fun. So I could definitely see them like going through a million reshoots or whatever and then handing it over. Which I mean, I guess,
but I mean, like having literally like having a different picture to score to, you would end up writing different things. Like if the like mood or the, you know, if the vibe of the movie were different, then the score could have been a lot different. I mean, maybe hypothetically, I think it could have been perhaps more fun.
No, and I think that like a lot of people have said this is not an original idea of mine, that like in Solo you can see the moments where it was supposed to be tonally different, like more comedic, like Lord Miller wanted it to be or whatever, and then like you can see weird tone shifts where there were like different creative decisions, like the Lando's closet theme or whatever is this like beautiful sweeping romantic theme, whatever, and like and they kiss in the closet and whatever, but like, and you're like, why is this being wasted on this one moment in the closet and then never think it's used that much ever again. Like, and there's all these very weird things. And then you're like, this probably made more sense in the original version.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that in mind for when we get to the Lando's closet part, because that track really stands out to me as taking itself very seriously. Like, it's beautiful, but it's also, it does strike me as like, wow, isn't this super sentimental? Which is fine, but
yeah, which
very sentimental, like very.
Like, and it's supposed to be a sentimental like, it's supposed to be a callback, obviously, to Han and Leia in the back of the Millennium Falcon, and also it's supposed to be like, oh, like, they haven't had any time alone, and he hasn't seen her in a really long time, and they like grew up together, whatever. But like, because this movie is not written very well, it's also like, the sentiment is there, I guess, for them on. You're telling us to feel sentimental, but you're not. Like, I don't feel anything. So I'm so sorry, Kira. You did deserve better than that. But yeah, it's the tonal shifts are like, actually, I think Enfys Nest theme is a lot like that too. When they're like, this is a funny little adventure movie, and then they drop Enfys Nest theme, and you're like, oh, maybe this is an epic like the rest of Star Wars.
Oh, interesting.
That's how, I don't know. That's how it feels to me, especially at the end when it's like her like unmasking whatever, and they have her like huge theme or whatever. You're like, oh, this is a serious movie now.
Well, I do feel like the movie is overall. I feel like the tone of the movie is serious. And, and so I think it like fits with the seriousness, but I feel this way sometimes when like I feel like the score is doing a lot of work to convey things, and so that may be like what you're picking up on, because I do pick up on that too, where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm on board with this. I think it's epic or whatever. If there were different music, maybe I wouldn't feel that way, but the music is certainly putting in the work here.
There's a moment in The Last Jedi that is very similar to that John Williams has talked about as well.
Oh, what's the part?
I may get canceled for this, but there's the moment when Rey and Ben touch hands when like they're forced FaceTiming for the first time on and then like Luke bursts in and is like, stop it. But that moment, there is a quote somewhere that John Williams said, like, you know, she's afraid of him. Like, I'm gonna write this as scary or whatever. And then Rian Johnson was like, oh no, it's supposed to be romantic. And he's like, is it? And I was like, oh wow, John Williams, go off. This is my own personal opinion. I don't speak for anyone else. But
also John Williams is like protective of Daisy Ridley.
Yeah, and I was like, go off, sir. Go off. But like he like I mean, and this is a general thing. I always love to say, like, Star Wars would not be what it is without the music, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting because sometimes the writing is like not there. And Solo was the biggest example of like the writing is literally not there and it's doing all the lifting. But like in that case in The Last Jedi as well, it's like it is literally giving us what the tone is, because this is a pretty hard shift in their relationship and how they are relating to each other. And people know me, I am famously not a big fan of Rey and Kylo Ren in the theater, but a big part of that was me watching it in the theater and being like, I'm having a great time. I like most of The Last Jedi. And then I'm like, whoa, what is up with the romantic theming and music that is happening here? Don't love that. But yeah, I maybe it's just a Star Wars tradition that most of the storytelling is in the music because the writing is a mess. I don't know.
I'll have to think about that. I mean, I think the music is just like one narrative aspect. So I think it is one very valid part of the storytelling. Like, so yeah, it is hard to say, but like in this train heist, the music is doing it's doing a lot. But also there are times where I feel like I can barely hear it. Because it is also very loud. And I almost think, like, I wonder, you know how like the Last Jedi it has the version that's like score only?
Yeah.
Like, I would actually be really curious for a solo with just the score, because I think the train heist part could actually be more exciting without the dialogue,
Oh,
with
yeah.
just the music full blast, because the music is like pretty intricate and like it's pretty hardcore. Like,
Yeah. And I mean, and this is a question for like, how did the production go or whatever, but this is also could be a thing of like, they could have written it like not knowing what parts of the dialogue they're going to put in there and being like, we're just going to write it for the whole train heist because we don't know what parts of the dialogue are going to be in there and what like parts of the scene or not or of whatever. And that could account for the like mismatch because they made so many choices last minute.
I don't know if there's a
And
mismatch, but
well, like the volume mismatch of like we have like these like sweeping huge things happening and also a ton of sound and they're also talking. um yeah, thank God for the dialogue mode on my television.
oh, that's a thing.
Yeah, I mean if you have a TV made maybe in the last 5 years, there might be a speech mode or a dialogue mode that you can turn on, which like lowers everything else and turns up the dialogue, and it's very helpful because movies like this, TV shows made in the UK, anything on Netflix, they all have this just horrible sound balance and the music is so loud and you cannot hear anybody speaking.
Oh, that's interesting. Well,
Um,
I will say that like also sort of changes in scoring practice have kind of
yeah.
done that too. Oh, I saw this like article going around recently, and I won't. Have you? Do you know what I'm talking about? The
I
one
know
where it's
exactly. I know
yeah,
exactly what you're talking
it's
about.
the
Like
one that's
it's
like, why can't I ever hear movies anymore? And I will say that like that, I the like emotional quality of it, I won't say that
yeah.
like everything was factual in there, or like I don't know for a fact, but the point of it was like movies are getting so loud and the music also kind of overpowers the dialogue, and it's like just hard to, and with naturalistic sounding acting being like so popular now, it's like kind
Yeah.
of hard to get a clear dialogue, and the music, tends to be very blah.
Yeah, well, it's almost yeah, and it's a very weird combination of factors, and also we're watching them on so many different devices that they can't really like
Yes.
optimize it for the device or the
Yes.
format anymore. Like,
That's a
yes,
big thing.
you're not just watching it in the theater and you're not just watching it on a TV. You could also be watching it on a laptop, on an iPad, with headphones, without headphones, on a phone. Like how does it work with all those things? And I mean, and that's why like you have this huge increase in people who like didn't need them before wanting subtitles.
Yeah.
Which is
Uh-huh.
good. It's a good and
It's
great thing, and
fine.
I think should be promoted. But it's also so crazy. Like now, everybody watches stuff with subtitles.
Well, and the
Um,
thing is, like, I think the pandemic kind of like exacerbated that for a lot of people because everyone has different devices. And as much as I am on board with, you know, if you only do theatrical releases, that kind of leaves a lot of people out who can't, whatever. I see like in theory, if things could all be like a home release and everyone had like a nice home theater, sure. But when you are kind of, I don't know, when the trend is to just be like, I don't know, going toward watching things at home for everyone, for some people, that puts them at a big disadvantage if they don't have like a good environment to watch stuff on. They're
yeah.
not getting the experience that like someone
Yeah,
else.
well, and that's why I wonder, like, because it's happening so much with TV now, which was never in theaters and like streaming stuff, because they basically make everything like a movie now. Um,
I haven't watched Star Wars. What's that sound one that they came out with? Not Biomes, but I haven't watched that
oh,
either.
I thought it was by,
There
yeah,
was one that came
that,
after that was like just for sound design. I have
yeah,
not watched that, and everyone asks me if I've seen that, and I'm like, no, I really want to see it, but I don't want to see it like on my iPad.
yeah, no, I have a really nice TV now, and I'm like, damn, is this how people live? This is nice. I was like, damn, they got nice speakers.
So
This
yeah,
is
the
a whole
speaker.
different way to live.
Speaking of speakers, I have a quote about this train heist sequence from Post Magazine, and I'll put a link in the show notes. And
Ooh.
they talk about like sound designing this scene, and it might lend some insight as to why things come off differently in the theater than they do like maybe watching on a different device. Okay, so the first sequence they looked at was the train heist in Reel 2, which features intense yet fun sound design of the speeding train and the ensuing scuffle with the Cloud Riders. There's also composer John Powell's train heist track with big pounding drums and blasts from the brass section. Here, re-recording mixer Chris Scarabosio was able to take advantage of the Atmos surround field by sending elements of the score into the top speakers, who has those, so that the effects and score weren't fighting for the same space. Scoring mixer Sean Murphy at Abbey Road set up the stems, which means like just extracted parts of the sound mix, so that some elements were assigned to Atmos channels. For example, we can put the natural reverb of what was recorded at Abbey Road up in the top speakers and recreate that environment in Atmos. It adds this extra reality to the music, said Wood. And Matthew Wood, of course. And like that is all awesome. And that stuff like that leads to an awesome theatrical experience. And as they say also in the article, you know, this came out before the pandemic, but there's no better way to experience gigantic battles in space than in the movie theater. But just in case you need some convincing, Soloist Star Wars Stories supervising sound editor Matthew Wood shares his opinion on the topic. I absolutely feel that people should see these summer blockbuster movies in the theater. They are built for widescreen and Atmos sound. It's just a much more immersive experience in the theater. You can relax your eyes and let the giant image come to you. You don't have to strain to look at anything. The light to dark ratio is much easier to look at in a theater, and the sound is built for the theater. We built all of these Star Wars films in Atmos natively, and if you can hear it in Atmos, then I highly recommend that. I think it's really going to enhance your experience. So basically, it was built for the fancy shit. Like that's what this film is made for.
They said that for about Dune as well. And I mean, it's hard because there's only some theaters that'll have like that one Dolby Atmos theater as well. Like if you go to like, you know, your normal movie theater or whatever, they'll be like, we have the normal ones. And then we also, if you want to buy the ticket at the Dolby Atmos one, it's funny actually because when Rogue One came out, I think I saw it 3 times in the theater. And one of those times I saw it in the 4DX, like the Dolby 4DX with the chairs that like move and stuff.
Yeah, like Cinemark.
Yeah, and it was a Regal theater in New York, and it was very expensive, and some of it felt like being at Disney, and it was cool, but I felt like it was like I had seen the movie before. So it didn't add as much to the experience. It like truly it's the sound part that adds to the experience. The other shit really wasn't worth my time as much.
Yeah, of course. They just add the reclining seats and whatever.
Yeah. Well, no, these are the seats that like move and have like the sound coming out behind your ear and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why they call it the 4DX experience, and they have like air coming out and stuff like that. It's like
I've
kind of
never
like a ride.
Experienced that.
Yeah, it's like $35 a ticket. It's like it's kind of insane. And I was like, it was cool. Don't get me wrong, but it was very expensive, and like I could have gotten the same experience with just like going to a Dolby Atmos theater and then having like the really cool surround sound. So. That's my 4DX review. No. But yeah, it's hard because it's like I don't know. Are they making like different versions of the films now or with different sound mixes?
Well, I think they do. Well, yeah, I think they do have to deliver like different types of mixes to fit different formats. Just like visually, I'm sure they have to, deliver a widescreen and then a other whatever, different formats. The TikTok version, the vertical. I'm just kidding. What if Solo were in vertical?
Oh my god, no!
Just kidding. That would be really weird. But it is just worth thinking about the fact that as technology gets better, which it continuously does, of course, these like premier resourced studios will, of course, it makes sense, would be using all these fancy new things and would, optimize things for the fancy things. Lots of things here, but it just kind of like increasingly perhaps leaves more people out, or basically it doesn't like leave people out, because people can still watch this and not even perceive that they're missing out, but it's like it's something that you can't even put words to sometimes. It just hits you differently, and you don't know until you've experienced it. You don't even realize that you're missing out. But if you're in the industry, you just know that it wasn't made for you.
Yeah. I also, as a musician, I always feel bad when there's like parts of the score. My favorite thing in general is movies that are bad or that nobody saw, but that like there were clearly craftspeople behind some parts of it that like they went balls to the wall with it, and you're like, you know what, like with the costumes or the production design or the score or something, and I'm like, nobody's appreciating your hard work on this crap ass film. And I wouldn't put Solo in the crap territory, but it's definitely like the moments like this where you're like, oh, like these musicians, not only John Powell and John Williams, whatever, but like the musicians, they're going like crazy. Oh my God. They're going crazy on this track that is so cool. And you only hear it like sometimes when the horns pop out, and that's about it. And you're like, no. Like as a musician, I'm like, no, this makes me so sad.
Well, on that note, let's continue listening to some of it. And if you're paying attention at home or if you're following along on the soundtrack, we are on like the deluxe train heist, by the way, which is on the deluxe album. Okay, so continue listening.
It's no good to die alone, kid. Val was right.
Those strings, so sad in the background. All right, I think I heard a Dies Irae. It's wild that you can't really hear what's happening, but I think it's very interesting what's happening. So I'm going to play it in the version just from the soundtracks without the without the sound effects, so that you can hear what's happening in the music there. So this is super hidden and obviously not confirmed, but Alex Ludwig, if you're listening to this, Dies Irae guru, calling you up here. Tell me if you would count this as a Dies Irae reference. And in case people are new to this podcast or to Dies Irae in general, do you know what I'm referring to, Klaudia?
From the Requiem?
Sort of, like it's in a lot of Requiems, put it that way.
Oh, yeah. I was like I meant Mozart's Requiem.
It's certainly in there for sure.
Yeah, no, I do not know what you were referring to then.
It's related. It's like, it's this motif. And it pops up. It's like a big movie motif that not only movies, like it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's like, it'll be popped into places when maybe there's doom being insinuated, or like in moments of, a lot of Star Wars. It's in a lot of Star Wars too, in like moments of either tragedy or something. It's very baked into like Jin's theme and stuff. And it's very baked into Rogue One. It's very baked into Master Switch. It's very baked into, different parts of A New Hope. It's very baked into like Episode 3, Anakin's stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably some stuff with foreshadowing in the prequels. Oh my God.
Yeah. So here,
Damn.
right as Rio dies, I hear it. Let's just say.
Oh my God.
Okay, let's see if I can just magically find the right place. Okay. And it's as he slumps over. Okay. So this is when we have the Han Solo theme. And I like this little counter stuff. Enfys Nest. Second theme. And this is as the Marauders, are here. The time signature is now this is kind of like Enfys Nest theme 1. A little bit more. Okay, so now we're in the interior of the Y-45 hauler. Rio's like, you weren't lying, kid. You're a hell of a pilot. Wow, it's like wild. You can't even really hear this. I'm like, I don't... Well, it might be cut out, to be fair. Strings are just doing so much here. Oh my gosh. It's so good. Okay. Okay, now this is where you can tell things are getting sad. Rio's like dying. Okay. Did you hear it? Did you hear it?
I did, and I was like, oh my god, just like Rogue One.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the way it's used is very reminiscent of the way it's done in Rogue One, which is...
Damn.
Yeah, it's like right at that moment in Rogue One too, where...
Yeah. Shout out to Hope by Michael Giacchino, the absolute banger.
And it's like hidden. It's not like super overt. It's like just at the end of a phrase as it goes into something else where it's like super casual, but it happens to be right when Rio slumps over. It's
yeah.
And then it goes on.
Also, as a string player, listen. Well, any John Williams.
You play
track,
violin too, right?
Yeah, and any John Williams track, I'm always like, I enjoy this so much, but also, and it's so hard. And but this piece, when you were talking about like the strings I was like, I feel tired listening to this. I am imagining the physical work and mental work that goes into this, and like they have a choir there. I don't know if they were like live in the studio with not. Them or anything, but like I am imagining the amount that went into this and because the articulation there is a lot, and I was just like, oh, this is stressing me out for a completely different reason than anyone else watching this movie. But that happens to me with a lot of movies, so.
I actually feel like here, the violin parts to me, oh my gosh, I should have had my violin out. Okay. Let me think. Let's hear again. Okay. There's a lot of There's a lot of interplay. There's like different instruments going like
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I actually feel like it sounds very fun to play. Like these like this is like you're locked in, you're like counting to make sure you come in at the right spot.
Yeah.
It's like very ensemble.
Yeah, I'm like imagining what that sheet music must look like, and it must be just an absolute mess because of the amount of interplay and counting. And it's also one of those situations that happens in scores a lot, where you have like the same theme that's played by all the different parts, and you're like, it has to be really fun to perform, but God, to rehearse that must be just hell on earth. But in a good way, like in a very fun way. Because I don't know,
someone's always gonna come in late.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Although
like, they're playing with click track for sure, so that helps.
Yeah, but even so, there's parts of that where I'm like, the John Williams. I have had to play pieces of the Harry Potter score, and good God, sir.
Oh yeah, Harry Potter. Yeah, I think he has said that Harry Potter, or this one part of Harry, I can't remember exactly what it is, but he has said that was like his hardest thing, but I don't know.
I was like, he hates violinists. He hates us.
No, he loves us. That's why he gives us parts like that. But here when we get that Dies Irae part, and I bet there are a lot of people listening who are just instantly reminded of Rogue One as well, because it just like, it really like hits that same part, because it's like the same part of the, like, it's the four notes is occurring at the same spot in the key that it's in. So it kind of has the same functional feeling as it does in Rogue One, and the placement of it just happens to be, also like at the end of the phrase, like I said. So, I'm gonna just assert that I think that's an intentional little wink, Dies Irae. I think it is. I'm just gonna say.
Yeah. I'm trying to this came out after Rogue One. Yeah, it did.
I mean, I don't think it's a
It
nod
had
to
to
Rogue
be.
One at all, but like
Well,
I think it
no,
is a
but
nod to Dies Irae because that
yeah,
is
no.
everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's not a nod to Rogue One, but I'm like that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I'm
It
like,
is
oh
interesting.
man. Also, this is another instance in the movie where I feel like the music is doing a lot of heavy lifting because these are characters we've been with for like 8 seconds and they're about to die and they're like,
That is true.
you should feel sad about this. And I'm like, yeah, I do feel sad about this and I barely know them. There was
That's
also the moment
true.
in the theater that I became the Joker and I was like, it seems you have fridged a woman. So like the music, it was really vibing with how I was feeling. So
I think you're right because also am not really natively feeling that attached at this point to Rio. I'm not feeling that attached to Val yet either. However, when she dies, I'm like, what the hell? Like, she could, I'm not attached to her, which is also, I have to say, that's my critique with the High Republic. Is so many of the characters are like, I feel like I didn't even get to know them, and then I'm like, okay, well, I don't actually care that you killed everyone because you barely gave me any time with them. But anyway,
my special boy, where did he go? Please don't remind me.
That's for another discussion. But
when they put Stellan Gios on screen, and my special boy.
I will have you on that if that happens for that season for sure. Okay, so
yeah. I'm sure you could do a whole other thesis on how they score the audiobooks because yes. Well, especially the adult ones because sometimes the middle grade and the YA they
sometimes
outsource
don't have
like they sometimes don't have it, but also Disney is usually the one doing them and they outsource it and they don't often have like the Star Wars tracks for those. So they just sound. Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's kind of a mess. I have made it my mission to track. This is a whole tangent. I've made it my mission to track this.
I'm actually really curious. We should talk about that later because I'm really curious about audiobook music and I've done a lot of deep dives on it as well. And I'm curious what you have.
Shout out to this is just because shout out to Mark Thompson specifically, but also because I am a big fan of the Thrawn books. There's this like
that's how we connected.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It was my autistic Thrawn thread.
Oh man! Also today when we were recording this is the 5-year anniversary of Thrawn 2017.
Best book.
And I'm like, oh, the best romance ever written.
The best. So true. I just finished rereading it actually.
Oh. Sometimes I read the first few pages to feel something.
Oh no, me too. I just moved last month and it's been like the most stressful 2 months like of ever. And I was like, I need something to make me feel like comforted during my move so that I have something like familiar. And so I, started the Thrawn audiobook before I moved so that I would be able to get into it and like have it soothe me to sleep every night. And then be able to like carry it over to the new apartment so that I could then finish it in the new apartment. And I have to say, like having like Thrawn keep me company during my move, it's very helpful.
Oh my God. I have a friend who I bonded with because she wrote one of the best, like whether or not you ship Din Luke, I think this is one of the best Star Wars fan fictions I've ever read because there's just a really interesting concept of the Force and all kinds of cool stuff in it. And we bonded over that. And she writes really good fan fiction. She was finishing Rebels and getting into the Thrawn books and has been live texting me her reactions. So
I want a friend like that.
I've been re-experiencing the Thrawn books with her, and I am crazy.
So jealous. I'm so jealous. I asked one of my very good friends who has been on the show very recently. I have just been begging him to read the Thrawn books, and I selfishly no, I mean I'm being a good friend, but I was like, I'll be there while you listen to the audiobooks.
Yeah.
I can accompany you while you listen to I kind of want to be on the journey.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, text me when you get to Good Day, Lieutenant Vanto. Text me when you meet Utro. Hey, text me when you meet Samacro. Hey, text me when. She's like, I'll get there. I'm like,
I want a friend to experience. I just want to be a fly on the wall while a friend experiences Thrawn for the first time. But
actually,
anyway,
speaking of Thrawn, Disney, where are the last two seasons of Rebels score? They have never released to either buy or stream. So Thrawn's theme is nowhere. You have to pirate
that's
it.
true.
And I think that's chisphobic, to be honest.
I've said this on several podcast episodes and haven't done it yet. I said I would do it, but I told myself I'd do it after I move. So now that I've moved, maybe I should probably do it soon. I really want to make a video about Thrawn's theme because I have a whole TED Talk inside of my soul about it. But anyway,
Kind of Brothers, y'all are crazy for that one.
Let's continue with the train heist. So Rio does.
You're like, I have some thoughts, actually.
Yeah, I do. So let's continue with the train heist. Sadly, Thrawn is not here, but Rio dies.
I will tell you this one thing.
Okay,
you can cut this out. When we first watched Rebels, my partner was like, because it's an organ for him. It's an organ for him, and my partner, every time there's an organ involved, or
like
whatever,
an organ. Okay, yeah,
keeps going. It's like the evil organ from Belle's Enchanted Christmas. That's all they could think about when Thrawn was on screen.
It is a very ominous organ. I will give it that.
Yeah. And I was like, of all the references, that one. Anyways, that's just.
It's that.
Yeah.
It goes like. There it is.
Yeah.
That's Thrawn's theme, but faster.
My special bestie, my good time boy.
So here, after we get the Dies Irae, basically telling us Rio has died, we get into these very pointy sounding violin arpeggios that remind me of the beginning of the movie. So actually, let me play it on the track so you can hear it, and then maybe you'll recognize it. Something similar from the beginning of the movie, perhaps. I don't know. Okay, not yet. I probably rewound a little too much, but it's fine. Okay, so now we're going Rio's death again. It's no good to die alone, kid. This is the gang theme in the background. That's the Dies Irae. And then this part. It's when Han's hitting and the sparks are flying at the beginning. And then he's going off to Oliver Twist family. Yeah. So it's that.
Not Oliver Twist.
I mean, you know what I mean. The Lady Proxima.
Please, Lady Proxima, can I have some more?
Yes. It's the. And then it just like. Because every hero needs their key change in their song, right?
Oh, yeah. And they're like, what if we started this out with a crazy... What if they were like, you know what? This isn't Solo. This is Solo Tokyo Drift. That's the beginning of this movie. It's just a Fast and Furious movie. And you're like, oh, okay. All right, Vin Diesel.
And the theme that comes after that in both instances is Han's second theme, which is the searching theme. So it's like...
Yeah.
And there's often like those arpeggios happening in the background. And arpeggio just means like broken chord. So yeah, instead of going like, It could go, but instead it's broken. So that's what an arpeggio is. And that's it. It reminds me very much of the beginning of the movie. So I think it's definitely like arpeggios as an accompaniment choice are extremely common in music, period. So it's not like necessarily that big of a deal as a reference, but it is like definitely something that John Powell particularly uses a lot in the violins here, like how it is here. And yeah, I mean, I think it's effective, and I like this part that we're getting to where we're gonna basically get Han Solo's searching theme, but it modulates up like a little bit incrementally. So I'll just keep playing exactly where we stopped. So it keeps going up. I think it's gonna go up one more. Okay. Well, it didn't go up again, but I'll go back a little bit. But what we're getting is actually the gang superimposed on top of that. So they do work really well together. Okay, so let's go back.
Aww.
No, go back more. Sorry. Okay. Okay, now here's the arpeggios. Key change arpeggios. Young Han in B flat minor. D, and then Young Han in B minor, so up a half step. And then D minor. With some harmonies. With gang. D D D D. It's really subtle. Like I it's great. Yep. So here where it starts to slow down again, this is the Val doom stuff. This is Val's end. She's like, it's been a ride, babe, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Yeah, so.
And that's
Rest
crazy.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. Girl, you deserve so much better. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, and it feels like her sacrifice was not pointless, but
yeah,
it feels like, since when did she care so much about this cause? Like, I thought they just wanted to retire and play Val chords.
Yeah, or more just like, she's escaped worse. Like, why would she be like, yeah, let me sacrifice myself so you can get this haul or whatever? I'm like, girly, what? It's not clicking. I remember
it often doesn't click for me though when characters do moments of sacrifice. It takes a lot for me to like really be on board with that, because I feel like it takes me out of stories, because just the average person, okay, I'm speaking for myself, isn't just like, doesn't just step up to do that.
Yeah.
So for me to have this expectation of movie characters, that movie characters they can all sacrifice themselves and have the honor to sacrifice themselves at any time. It's that's hard for me to understand, unless I really like get them. Like, Luke, I get it.
Shout out to Kanan Jarrus.
Kanan, I get it. Like, they have to earn it.
I have some toxic opinions about that.
Oh.
That just might be me. It's fine.
Okay.
I'm like, he survived much worse, but that is what kills him. It's not clicking. It's not clicking to me.
That's true. But also, isn't that kind of the nature of death, though? Where like, sometimes losing people is.
Yeah, but I was just like, and they were like, yeah, he knew that it was going to happen, whatever. I'm like, but why? Why at that point? Like, is it just because the show had to end and they were trying to wrap it up? Because that's what it felt like. I was very toxic when that last season came out. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a big theme of we can't get into that too much, but there's a big theme of sacrifice between Depa Billaba and then Kanan Jarrus and then Ezra Bridger. Oh my god, I just made myself sad. That in general, that you're like, oh man, that's
but I don't feel like the vein of sacrifice flowing between Beckett or Val. They're very take care of yourself. That's like their whole thing is like, you take care of yourself first, or like each other, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other piece here is this is also, not to compliment this movie because I have a lot of problems with it, but this is also a moment where like this is kind of Han and Chewie's first moment when they're working together, and being and like bonding or whatever, and like living for somebody who's not just yourself, or for Han this like idealized version of Kira in his mind. And so it, there's these people who are like, oh yeah, I only live for myself or whatever, but clearly they do live for somebody else, or just so that this other person can like live another day or whatever. And that's very true of Han, where he's like, I don't have anybody, I mean, except Chewie, of course, and like he would do anything for them. Like that's kind of similar. So like, maybe that being said, they do not explore the Han and Chewie relationship enough in this film, and it makes me very mad. But
that's true.
Yeah.
And I agree with you.
But I could see that as a parallel, because then like you were talking about like the gang theme or whatever, like the only people that are left are Beckett, Han, and Chewie.
Yeah, and our Han and Chewie, like up until like an hour ago, they weren't even like part of the gang.
Yeah. And then, and now they're little besties. So like maybe this is, I don't know. It's foreshadowing. Oh no, I made myself sad.
Well, the thing something that I actually like about this scene is, well, when Han and Chewie are like, basically Han makes a good call here. Like Han makes a good call. Like he is very clear-headed and, realizes that he has to sacrifice the job, like basically to survive. And Beckett is, stricken with some sort of shock, obviously, and grief, and just like whatever is going on with Beckett, and when Beckett like punches Han, and Han's like, what the hell? And Beckett sort of, he's not even like, oh, I'm glad you survived, man. He's like, we're screwed over by Crimson Dawn. Like he's really like, yeah.
I mean, I don't blame him. He's like, my wife just died so that we could get this, and then we didn't get it anyway.
Oh, for sure.
Like, what's that? I'll also say, I think that I'll speak to the Han and Chewie thing as well. Like, this is also, Chewie's like really old, and he's had this joke on RuPalp's Podrace that Han Solo is Chewie's fucked up little dog, and and like, he's older and he cares mostly about his people and also about his family, and like, why would he like follow Han around, whatever? And it's just him being like, oh, my dog, I gotta go make sure he's okay. And like that's Chewie with Han. And I think this is a moment where he's like, oh, okay, like he's pretty capable. All right, I'll stick around. I like this guy. Kind of like he's not a total idiot. Deserting from the Empire and then just hoping for the best. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And also I think in Star Wars there are definitely themes of like, I mean, okay, not only just chosen family and who we stick around with, but how no one is perfect, and we time and time again see characters deciding to stick with each other just because like they don't want to be alone and they need something is better than nothing. Like we see it in the book of Boba Fett, even when like Fennec is like, sure, she plays it cool at first, but she might as well join up with Boba. Like it's more entertaining than being herself.
That's such a good parallel. She's like, I guess. Yeah. And that's Chewie with Han. He's like, I guess. He's like, you gave me new got nothing else to do. I mean, Chewie did have other things to do. Fennec was like, I don't have anything else to do. Yeah. So that's a very fun parallel, actually. I mean, the book of Boba Fett really is just, oh my god, two pretty best friends. That's really just them. So
it's, oh yeah. Yeah, now that you now I'm thinking of Boba and Fennec really are like Han and Chewie. Yeah. And like Han, like Fennec is the more capable one who like barely gets any lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or just says like stuff that confirms exactly what Boba says. Just
and
like
also
Chewie.
she knows She knows everybody. Like Chewie, you're like, wait a minute, you know Omega? She knows everybody and doesn't mention it ever. That's so Yasmin Slay of her.
Yeah, that's so funny. So what was I saying? Oh, I was saying that Beckett or Han. Okay, so Han makes this call that he makes completely in earnest here, whereas later in his life he will still do stuff like this, but he will play it off in a different way. Put it that way, with much more baggage unresolved. So right here we are witnessing one of Han's formative wounding moments, I bet.
He's just a little guy. He's literally just a little guy in this movie.
And one thing that like really strikes me when I see, like, going back to when Rio dies, like the look that Han has on his face when after Rio has just died and Han just is basically in the holler with dead Rio, the look on his face is like, it's just like frozen shock. He looks like a kid, like in that moment, like deer in the headlights.
Yeah, well, and he just came from like being basically a trooper on the ground and seeing some pretty horrible stuff as well. And so it's clear like he wasn't in the Empire very long, so like he is consistently like, Mom, I'm not cut out for this, my guy.
Well, he was in the Empire for like 3 years, right? There's a time jump, right?
Is it 3 years?
I think it's like it's definitely longer than they show in the film.
Yeah, but it's 3 years. Han Solo, you bootlicker. No, I'm kidding. Hey, to all my comics fans listening, shout out to Valence Bylert. Valence is a character from the comics who was then brought into canon, and then is like introduced in the comics that were like tied in with Solo. Well, he was reintroduced into canon that way, who like knew Han when they were both in the Empire, and like he becomes a bounty hunter. He's like the anti-hero version of Han Solo in a way. Also, I have a bit of a gay vibe, to be honest. He's like, yeah, I knew him when we were in the Empire together, and then like later on, basically during War of the Bounty Hunters, when Han is frozen in carbonite, he's like, I gotta go save my friend. I'm like, you haven't seen this man in like years. That's a little fruity. Like you have literally have not seen him in a very long time. It's a little fruity. Anyway, shout out to Valence Nation. It's a wild ride. I wish Valence was in the Solo movie.
He's there in spirit.
He's there in spirit. He's like becomes like a cyborg in a way, kind of in a, not in a Terminator way, but like he becomes kind
like in a Vidian way.
Yeah, well, he stays in the Empire and he's like, I'm gonna help my people that way, whatever. And he basically gets pretty fucked up, and the Empire's like gives him surgeries, but eventually is like, we have no use for you anymore, goodbye. And then he's like, nah, fuck this, and becomes a sad and grizzled bounty hunter. He's the anti Han Solo, but he's not a bad guy either, kind of like Han Solo. So he's literally just a fucked up little guy. Star Wars loves making that's my Glepshido for today.
I'm unfamiliar with this comic, so I'm just nodding and yeah, sure.
Yeah. And he's interacted because of War of the Bounty Hunters, he's interacted with Kira, he's interacted with the
whole cast of characters with Black Chrysanthemum.
Yeah, and they're all somehow relate to Han Solo in a way.
Because Han Solo is a human, and that means he's the best bounty hunter.
Yeah. Well, he's not a bounty hunter, he's a smuggler.
True.
He just like knows a lot of people, or has pissed off a lot of people, or a lot of people want to hook up with him. And he's just like, I am simply a little guy. And
with a really big grin.
Yeah. And she was like, I guess I have to protect this guy. Good God.
Oh, Chewie.
Yeah. Anyways, read War of the Bounty Hunters. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. So Chewie manages to detach the coaxium wagon from the rest of the train. So this is how Wikipedia describes the action. And this here's the translation in in English or basic. Val professes her love for him, Beckett, before detonating the bomb, killing herself and destroying the bridge. The destruction of the bridge causes the Conveyex to plunge into a deep gorge. After a struggle, Chewbacca manages to detach the coaxium wagon from the rest of the train. However, the Cloud Riders have attached grappling hooks to the wagon, dragging it down. Not wanting to risk the lives of Beckett and Chewbacca, Solo makes the difficult decision to let go of the coaxium wagon, which plunges into the ravine below and explodes. Chewbacca grabs Beckett, and the two survive by clinging onto the cable. Let's listen to how that goes. It's pretty wild. Okay. So that's Val. She pressed the button. Okay. So Han's about to...
Chewie, now!
All right. So Chewie's like trying to do it. Or... He detaches the coaxium. And we hear the gang theme in the background here with very frenetic underscore. Again, Enfys Nest.
Now let go! You fly straight!
Beckett's like, you do this.
Release your cables!
Young Han, his second variant, or his second searching theme.
Close, I gotta release. You do what I tell you, Han! Chewie, grab the line! Don't you do it!
He does it.
You coward!
Calls Han a coward. And then... Music stops, coaxium drops. Just like right there. Before, we do hear young Han Solo's searching variant. So in this set of 5 minutes, we have now heard all three of the Han themes. And the variant is... And yeah, I think that's probably my favorite of Han's themes. Possibly.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, it is a pretty good one.
It's a pretty good one. Also, this is also, I guess, the second time that he saves Chewie's life.
Yeah.
Also, I did just realize, and my friends made this reference, and then parallels to Captain America: The First Avenger.
Okay, I don't know this reference, but what is it?
So you may have seen gifs of it, but the way that Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, gets one arm is that back in World War II, when Captain America and his best friend Bucky Barnes are fighting Nazis, they have a train heist that's just like this in like a snowy area and whatever, and Steve Rogers, like, he can't hold on to him anymore. He can't hold on to Bucky Barnes anymore, and I don't know. He slips out of his hand or whatever, and he falls. And that's how he loses his arm. And of course, he thinks he's dead, and then he thinks Bucky is dead, and then he gets in the ice. He gets frozen in the ice and whatever, and then he comes back in the Avengers, whatever, and he's like,
What?
It's been 100 years. Actually, yeah. Captain America and Aang, the Last Airbender, have a very similar story in that they get frozen in ice and then get unfrozen like 100 years later, or not 100 years later, but quite some time later. And the big thing is that in the Winter Soldier, he finds out, oh, my friend Bucky is alive, but he has been brainwashed by Hydra into being this assassin who has this like big fucking metal arm or whatever. But like that's the big scene in the first Avenger. When Bucky supposedly dies and he falls off the train. And it's very much like this, except for that Han saves Chewie in this. So I would love to go back and watch that and look at the musical parallels there. Because I'll be very shout out to the first Avenger. It's a very wild parallel. And they're also like hanging off a cliff. Like there's a visual parallel as well. It's wild.
Well,
Yeah.
here he does save Chewie's life, but also Chewie didn't sign up to be part of this gang.
Yeah. No.
So really, he just said yeah, he saves his life, but Chewie's in this situation to begin with because he's following on. So,
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing.
but Chewie is like
Chewie.
obviously very ready to like, he's very ready to, I don't know, lay his life down, perhaps. I don't know. Chewie's very valiant. Like here, it's almost, I almost like wish I saw Chewie resisting a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really
Yeah.
sure what he wants sometimes. Like,
Yeah, he's always just like there, and they use him like for certain things, like when he shows up in the Clone Wars or like in other pieces, whatever. And I'm like, he's one of the most important. Like he gets a personality actually in the sequels, when he's like resisting things or whatever. And
true. And eating porgs and stuff.
yeah, and he's kind of just a grumpy, sad old man, and I love that for him.
Yeah, me too.
And I was like, he's my special boy. But yeah, that was another big thing of like, I was like, this movie should have been a buddy comedy about how Han and Chewie became friends.
Yeah.
Either it's the Lando Calrissian story, or it's a buddy comedy about how Han and Chewie, like Han and Chewie they're the most iconic friendship in cinema, possibly. Like one of the most. And you have a whole movie and they were like, he's gonna show up and then some other shit's gonna happen. You're like, wait a minute. Like,
I think this is like a common thing that I've talked to a lot of people about, both like on this podcast and also when I was on Star Wars Minute, and I listened to that podcast too, and they talk, or like Alex and Pete kind of talk about this thing too. We're like, I think a lot of people would have liked Solo more if it just committed itself to being like either a buddy comedy or like just adventures or just like something less lofty than it comes off, which is sort of like a little bit try hard. Like,
yeah, well, and that was a big conversation when that was happening, is that people were like, oh, I'd love to see something different from Star Wars. And I think that's why I love to look back on this movie now that the shows have come out and people really like them, because they are tonally different yet still fit very much within Star Wars. Like The Mandalorian can be funny, and it is all the time. And it's very tonally different, but it sits very well in Star Wars. Which is because they have people who come, like Dave Filoni, who come from animation, where in the Clone Wars, like, it very much sits within the Star Wars world, but also sometimes it's funny and stupid. It's very interesting to look back on this movie now, because I remember people being like, what does this movie want to be? And then people like, and of course people being like, oh, like the studio heads really wanted it to be more of the like blockbuster, more serious kind of adventure movie, and like the comedy got rid. Like those were kind of what was implied, kind of, was that like it was more like a comedy. And you could see that in the rapport from the actors and stuff like that. Like, and that's why I like Alden as Han and like stuff like you can see some of that. And then they're like, let's not do that. And a lot of people are like, yeah, it was studio intervention. I don't know if it's at the Lucasfilm level or at the Disney level or what it is, but it's very much lost. And I mean, the Kasdans are the one who wrote it, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah. I don't know either. But it's interesting how these things happen sort of as a reaction to what fans want, or what like the studios interpret fans will want. Yeah. I agree. Like, it is interesting to go back in time and look at like when this came out in comparison to all that had come before it, and maybe wonder what fan needs it was purporting to address, and how those expectations or needs were being met. But the thing with Star Wars fans, and I think like more of the fandom, I don't know, I don't even know what to call it. Like, that's an amorphous concept. No. But when I talk to Star Wars people, I think I hear more and more like this acknowledgement that when we as Star Wars fans say that we want something, we don't always actually know what we're talking about. We kind of just say like, well, we think that we want this,
nice,
but then
if
like
we did something like this.
But then when we see exactly that, sometimes we're like, oh no, actually no. Or if we see something totally different that we weren't expecting to want, sometimes, if it's done really well or like it's done really convincingly, we're like, yeah, actually I didn't want that, but hell yeah.
The Mandalorian is that. I was like, what do I need a Western? What do I need this for? And I was like, a bounty hunter? more like no thank you, whatever. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. Okay.
But then on the flip side of that is like everyone's like, I want to see Boba Fett escaping the Sarlacc and doing all this detail, basically all this stuff that led to the book of Boba Fett, putting so much like detail into things where, yeah, fans like apparently wanted to see that, but then when we got it, it was sort of like, oh, well, I guess we probably didn't need to see all of that. Yeah, it seemed cool,
we can't get into the issues in that show today.
Yeah, no, we can't. But still, Solo, fans, it's hard to know what like we actually want because I feel like artists have a vision and it's like their job, like that's what they do. Like that's their role is to create something, and fans can't just direct exactly like all the moves.
Yeah. Well, I also, especially with the big Disney movies and stuff like that, like the Marvel and the Star Wars or whatever, they're very much made by committee kind of films, and you can often tell, like with The Rise of Skywalker, I like to look at movies in the context of the business of movies a lot, and people love to blame like one director or whatever, and I'm like, I promise you, it is most of the problems with The Rise of Skywalker are probably not J.J. Abrams' fault.
For sure.
There are some things that, or even Rian Johnson's fault in The Last Jedi, whether you like that film or not. I'm like, these movies are so heavily pared down at the studio level. Solo being the huge example. That like there's always things that I wonder, and Solo was also comes at an interesting time because you were talking about there's the fans and the fandom, but then they're also making all these movies to build fandom. That's like a big thing with IP right now.
Right.
They're like, and there's a saying that especially at Disney, they have built Marvel fandom pretty much from the ground up. Nobody knew who the fuck Iron Man was like 15 years ago. You know what I mean? But Star Wars sells itself. It will always make money. Whether the films are good or not, it will always make money, and it sells itself. And Star Wars, and it sucks as a Star Wars fan because you're like, I would like things to be good and like you to make things that are interesting, but then sometimes they're always kind of the second tier to Marvel. Mm-hmm. But in general, I always think of it as like all these movies, like they come at it from the creatives angle and they come at it from like what works for the fans angle, but the biggest thing for them is like what's going to bring in box office. Nowadays they've gotten a little better with it because there's TV shows and they're trying to bring in streaming, and so that's a whole different thing. But with box office, that was also big. Like all of the superhero movies are coming out, I believe. This movie came out like right before or right after Avengers Endgame came out, I believe. And so a lot of it is also like they were like, okay, what's going to get people to come see a Star Wars movie, whether or not they know shit or they're a fan or whatever. You know, it's got to be a big adventure movie or whatever, just like whenever we drop a Marvel movie about characters nobody knows or gives a shit about, like Guardians of the Galaxy, how do we get people to come see it? That's kind of the bigger deal for them. And then like the parts of the story where we're like, okay, but it should be a buddy comedy about Han and Chewie. They're like, yeah, we don't care. You know what? Actually, nobody expects a comedy from Star Wars. Nobody's going to want that. And by nobody, they mean the wider audience, whether or not that's actually true. It's far easier for us to market just another like big blockbuster adventure movie, and know what kind of movie money that's going to bring in. And then they did several things that then fucked them over with that. Like they put it only like 6 months after the last Star Wars movie, and then also put it like right before a huge Avengers movie. And I was like, okay. But yeah, I mean, to me, I think of it very much of like, they do not make these movies for the fans, and none of them. For Marvel, they make them to build fans. For Star Wars, they make things, and The Mandalorian was a case of it being successful, where they made a Star Wars, but not for Star Wars fans. And boy, does it have quite a lot of lore in it and whatever, because Dave Filoni is great. But like they made something that's why people who had never seen Star Wars before and may never watch the rest of it subscribe to Disney Plus to watch it, and that's the goal. So anyways,
I think that's that's a good perspective to remember, because a lot of the times, like, we fans will focus on like what they're doing for the fans or not. Don't they want to please the fans? And what exactly what you said, which is not just in movies, but like I feel this way with a lot of companies that I feel like I'm loyal to. Like either I subscribe to their software or whatever, where I feel like sometimes I perceive that I can't really say, you know, my perspective is biased because I'm you know focused on me, but it feels sometimes like growth is more of on everyone's radar naturally than nurturing existing, you know, customers or, you know, existing fans. And that it logically, it makes sense. And I feel that way, you know, with Star Wars, a lot of like with Mandalorian, exactly what you said. It was to build fans. It's not to like nurture the hardcore like sliver.
And what they do and what they have realized with things like Marvel, whatever, is that like they can do both. Like they'll bring in the most obscure fucking Marvel characters and you know remake them into something less problematic or so whatever. Or like in The Mandalorian, like they're bringing in Thrawn. Like people don't know who the fuck Thrawn is or whatever. They're like, oh, we can bring in new fans because the fans are. We're the beta testers, kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, like that's popular. We can do that. But like they're never making it for us.
Yeah. What do you think Star Wars makes anything for fans? What do you think?
I mean, I would say like the books and comics definitely, and sometimes to their detriment. This is a whole other problem. Like the High Republic is, I would definitely say, is for fans because fans are like, we can't do more. Like we can't do more in the current era. Do something different. And they're like, all right, we're gonna do something different, a whole different time period. Like I think that actually is, and also and it's doing that both thing of, and also sets them up to be able to ring this IP forever, in on screen with other things. But like. I mean, I see a lot of IP doing this, and this is the Netflix model as well, which is like whether the thing does as well or not doesn't really matter. We kept it relevant, and you guys are subscribed, so we're just gonna throw something else out. Keep it pushing, which doesn't always feel so great, but you know. But I mean, you were saying when does Star Wars do that? Like with the comics and stuff, like. Comics is such an inaccessible medium for various reasons that I won't get into, whatever.
Oh, I agree.
But like, that's why, you know, they have 18 million comics about Darth Vader. And I'm like, granted, some of these runs are really great and I love them very much. Charles Soule, I love you, girly. But a lot of times you're like, I can only watch Darth Vader be sad about Padme and do random shit for so long, like and whatever, but they know that like that's what's gonna sell. Like Dr. Aphra is a character who was introduced in Darth Vader and like was able to have her own title. Like that's an anomaly, because and she's like a comic exclusive character, an anomaly.
Not anymore. She's in books too. Or one book.
Well, yeah. Well, she's in the script of she's in an audio drama
that's true,
or whatever.
That's true.
Yeah, but like all of the comics that are coming out, like people are like, oh, I'd love to have a comic about Ventress, or I'd love to have a comic about whatever, and they're like, what are the comics coming out? An Obi-Wan comic to tie with the Kenobi series, another Han Solo comic, and you're like, whatever, and like, yeah, they do it for the fans because they know what's gonna sell. It's tired. I'm so exhausted. I'm tired. For $1, name a woman. Her name cannot be Dr. Aphra.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Dr. Aphra is funny.
Yeah. The answer is Marvel Comics does.
Right. Yeah. The Marvel Star Wars comics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
anyways,
I'm trying to like, in all of these conversations about media, including solo or even TV shows or whatever, I feel like oftentimes the music comes along for the ride, whatever the ride for the rest of whatever is happening is. Like the music doesn't necessarily doesn't usually carve out its own, I don't know, separate opinion. Usually the opinion of the music usually follows with the opinion of everything else, which I think first of all, music is subjective. So obviously, like, if you listen to the same exact track in something that you hate, you will probably not like the music. And if you listen to the same track in something you love, then you're going to probably find the music more favorable just because you're associating it with something different.
I would say the Star Wars prequels are actually the biggest example of not that, which was always like people hated I experienced the shift, but people hated the prequels for years. But the joke was always, but John Williams went absolutely crazy with that one. Even the people who hated the prequels were like, I mean, but he went crazy with that one. Like, true. And that happens in Star Wars a lot. When they'll be like, oh yeah, I thought this part was shit, or like a lot of people didn't like the Book of Boba Fett or whatever, but they're like, the opening theme is a real banger though.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think that has, so the two examples being the book of Boba Fett theme and Duel of the Fates, which both are structured like pop songs. They're not structured like underscore. They're themes. They're like catchy.
Yeah.
They're meant to be that, but it's not like people are like that little cue, random cue in the whatever scene. So like that's there. I guess that speaks to the different types of like music for film. And writing music for different purposes.
Which a lot of movies don't do anymore. And one that I know, like, they used to say, oh, why do movies not have themes anymore? And I remember there was that video a while ago that it was like, people could name, like, ones from Star Wars or Jaws.
Right.
Or, like, a lot of
it was like, why are Marvel themes, why is Marvel music so forgettable or something?
And then, it's funny, in the next 5 years or so after that video, Marvel music became really important. Like, number one, Black Panther like had some so recognizable themes in it, and I'm giving you the like rundown because you're not a Marvel fan, but Black Panther has some really recognizable. It has a really cool soundtrack that's outside the score. Shout out to Ludwig Göransson.
I have thoughts.
You are.
I have thoughts.
But it has a really cool soundtrack outside of the score, but Black Panther, T'Challa himself has like a theme, and there's also like Wakanda does as well. And then there's an Avengers theme that was used that like people recognize that.
Yeah.
And once they got to the big ensemble movies like Infinity War and Endgame, like that was the first time where like musical cues, I experienced it when musical cues in the theater made people start screaming and crying. Like they played the Black Panther theme before he showed up and people went bonkers, balls to the wall. Like he didn't even show up. They started playing it and then they showed them flying into Wakanda and people went bonkers. And that was not a thing that used to happen in Marvel or like in Endgame at the end when they all walk through the portals and when they play the like when they play the Avengers music or whatever, like, and that's such a huge change because it's not a thing they do in music in movies anymore. They just don't.
I think they do. I think they do it.
Yeah,
but I think I feel like I wonder how much like criticism of lack of recognizable themes kind of led to intentional changes based on that to kind of not be falling into that criticism anymore, because I definitely feel like there has been in the past 5 years more emphasis on themes and doing that. However, I feel like first of all, I feel like whether or not music from a film is recognizable, to me that is not necessarily a litmus test for whether for its merit. I think it's just like one way that it's one way that the score to something can affect you. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad if you don't remember it. And I think also that, and I started feeling this a little bit in the Disney Plus shows. I do feel sometimes just, I'm almost like not, I almost wish themes were used less now. Like I kind of like want a little bit less of the heavy-handed theme, because it's so easy to manipulate fans based on themes and like just like get high. Music is like the straightest shot to your soul, and it's something that like you could make something terrible, but then like just put in that theme that everyone's just gonna like, and I don't know.
I mean that's exactly what happens in Solo. That's like literally the whole time I'm like, I'm angry about this, whatever. They played Duel of the Fates at the end. I was like, I feel crazy. like, I mean, are you talking about the live action shows, or are you also talking about the Bad Batch?
Mostly live action. Animation.
The Bad Batch.
The animation scores animation scores are a little bit different to consider, because they've been like just. The animation has been going on for so long in Star Wars. It's just the quality and the like approach is so inconsistent. It's kind of hard to like. It still very much feels in development. The animation, the animated scoring style or something, like each show is so different, and sometimes in season to season is so different too.
Yeah, well, and it's also very much a reflection of what was happening in the production at the time. Like the Clone Wars is just a story in the craziness of production, and then Rebels is also the last 2 seasons were coming out, and obviously the development far before that, like when the sequels and the anthology films were coming out, and so like it was on the back tier burner for Disney, whatever. So like when I think it's always so much a reflection of what's going on with the like with the production as well. But then you look at things like the Clone Wars season 7 or the Bad Batch, which are like highly developed and focus group from the beginning. Or I mean, they all are, but like which are highly focused on and like a big priority from the beginning, and it's very, very different.
Right, like the artistic vision feels more cohesive or whatever.
Yeah. But it seems that they can't, make them the right color. But that's a different story.
Right.
Unwhitewash the Bad Batch. Anyway.
Yeah. Agreed.
But yeah, it's like my like if we're talking about themes in Star Wars, that's why I was asking like, oh, do they ever use Han Solo's theme in the later movies or whatever? Like, there's so many times where like they've used a theme in a trailer. And then they
I don't watch trailers. Because they just
the biggest one for me that I feel rage about to this day is, and I would have felt this way if I hadn't seen the trailer as well, is The Rise of Skywalker. Putting my other problems with that film aside, putting them all aside, John Williams, this is the one time you have let me down, is they put Duel of the Fates in the trailer and it is not in the final film. And I was like, you're gonna put it in the first movie and not in the last movie? And like at the end, like this is the final Duel of the Fates. And like there's also like in Duel of Fates you have like the choir or whatever singing, and then you have the Sith Eternal like choir part, and you're like, why was that not Duel of the Fates there? That thematically, where was it? And it was even in the trailer. Like, what? John Williams, why?
John Williams has nothing to do with the trailers.
No, I know, but like, if I had never even seen the trailer, like, we have gotten to that point of the movie. It is like the culmination of 9 movies at this point. I'm like, what? Like, and I literally was in the theater and I thought it was going to start playing because they show the Sith Eternal. They show the Sith Eternal like almost like a choir in the back, almost.
Yeah.
Not like that movie makes any fucking sense.
I like it.
They show it and they show it in the back, and I was like, oh my God, are they going to start playing Duel of the Fates? And then they don't. And I was like, what the hell?
See, but here's the thing. Like, these things are so obviously so subjective, and everyone has different expectations. Yeah. So doing something like that would have been extremely polarizing. Like, first of all, like,
I mean, it already was, to be fair.
I mean, that's true. But like, I'm trying to think of like John Williams scoring something like he's trying to put what he feels is emotionally, thematically relevant, like and honestly, how John Williams decides to score certain things like shows where his head is at, like in terms of his understanding of Star Wars from the lore perspective and whatnot, which is like why, he originally, had one idea for the music for when Rey and Kylo touch, but then it was another way. So like John Williams as a composer and John Powell too, by, all composers, they are interpreting, like they do have some sort of like agency. They are putting a little bit of their cards out on the table, like laying a little bit of their cards out. And so like I think of if, doing a needle drop to the Phantom Menace, Duel of the Fates could have been, to me, I think it would have felt like regressive. Like I get it, like, but I don't want the needle drop. Like I want something
I almost wanted like the theme or something to be woven into something like with elements of Rey's theme or whatever, because that does, I think, show up in that ending part or whatever. And I felt the same way about like the one part of that movie that I do like is when all the voices of the Jedi talk to her or whatever, and I was like, where's like the Force theme and stuff? Like, guys, hello. And I'm like, I mean, I like it. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie. But I'm like I would have wanted to see it like woven into even like Duel of Fates, like with Palpatine's theme, whatever, because like at the beginning of the saga, you don't know that who he is, and then at the end all cards are on the table, whatever. Like I think it could not be the same as like a needle drop or whatever. This is my personal opinion. It's not like
for
I'm,
sure,
like,
everyone, you're entitled to that.
And it is weird though, because that is one of the only times I've ever been in a theater and been like, they should have played that song. But that might have been because I had already lost my entire marbles by that time.
Sometimes being taken out of something can turn on like the analytical, like the critique side of your brain a little bit more. I feel that way when I watch movies too. Like if I really, really loved a movie, I oftentimes don't like have a big analysis of it. But if I'm watching something and I'm not liking it, then I have so much analysis by the time I walk out, because I spend the whole time during the film just trying to like make sense of it and just trying to like put pieces together.
That was me with Solo. Exactly. I was like, quickly, does Lando have a theme? No, apparently he doesn't. Why? Quickly. Explain. Like I was in the theater. I was like, so where's Lando's musical motif? Hello? Excuse me. It's very interesting to me. And I walked out and I was like, and so I was given nothing. Okay. I see how it is.
Well.
And also John Williams, there's no musical motif for Finn. I see how it is.
Well, L3 has a theme, so there's that. But anyway, let's not talk about L3. You can give, before we wrap up, well, I have to ask you the Star Wars Music Minute questionnaire, but I'm going to run through the themes that were present in the set of 5 minutes. And we covered them all. It was the gang. We have all 3 of young Han Solo, which is heroic, searching, and the searching variant. We have both of the Enfys Nest themes. We have, I'm going to say, the Dies Irae theme. I think it counts. And in the soundtrack, we're on Deluxe Train Heist. Yeah.
Dang. I mean,
there's a lot packed
in.
Shout
out to John Powell for being like, I'm going crazy on this track. You know what?
This one is so intricate and I like it. Do you have any like final thoughts about Solo? Your Solo?
Oh God.
Oh yeah, is that opening a can of worms?
Justice for Val, man.
Yeah.
Also, where's my Enfys Nest YA novel comic appearance in the Bad Batch? Appearance in Andor maybe, because then she would be an adult. I'm getting the. It makes sense. Where is? I'm putting out my theory now that I think that Enfys Nest is going to join the new Crimson Dawn, which is the version of Crimson Dawn that Kira runs in the Empire era, in the later in the Empire era, which is different than the Crimson Dawn we have here. The spoilers for the comics. The new Crimson Dawn is basically like her secret society of people everywhere who want to kill Palpatine. It's very Yas Slay of her. And I don't know. I could definitely see it would be
absolutely bonkers, crazy bananas if Enfys Nest joined that. Because we have some other people who Sabe joins it as well.
Yes.
So
who I definitely want to cosplay as one day.
Yes.
With an instrument.
Yeah, so that's my ending thought is justice for Enfys Nest. Where is she? Please come back.
And Val. Maybe Val survived. Who knows?
Yeah, please.
Well, Beckett doesn't survive, but maybe Val did. I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah, Beckett, you can go. I don't care.
Truly. So on that note, let's do the Star Wars Music Minute questionnaire. So the first question is, in exactly 3 words, what does Star Wars sound like?
Like,
you can be as broad or vague or like interpretive or like.
I would say 3 words I would give it would be poetic, epic, I think.
These are good so far. Is it too? It's so hard to pick, huh?
I guess inspiring would be. I think that's going to be the 3rd one.
I like it.
Well,
I certainly agree. Poetic, epic, inspiring. That is what Star Wars sounds like.
Yeah.
And the second question is, what is something related to Star Wars music or sound that you are curious about, or want to learn more about?
Oh man. I actually asked Kevin Kiner a question about the one that I had before, but I mean, in general, I think the biggest things that I always want to know are what choices were like narratively on purpose, what was a choice of the composer, what was something that maybe the writer or the director asked for, whether that's a certain motif being used. I just find that part of the filmmaking process really interesting. Like the Michael Giacchino story of like, I only made it in like 4 weeks after they finished the movie and had to reshoot the whole thing. I love to know like, oh, this choice of this part of the score was, because of this or because of that. Like I asked Kevin Kiner, like, my favorite parts of the Clone Wars are when they use the Imperial March in fun little ways in the background. Sometimes that you hear and sometimes that you have to really listen for whenever Anakin does something bad. And I was like, was that on purpose or was that just a fun thing or whatever? But yeah, I think in general, like,
what did he
that's
say?
He said, yeah, it was definitely on purpose. I have to look at his like full response. It was like very long. He did a Reddit AMA.
Oh, cool.
But he's like, yeah, it was definitely on purpose. And a lot of them were actually quite well planned. It wasn't him just going like, this would be funny. Yeah, I need to look back on it. And I was like, cool. Wow.
Well, the Imperial March part in Solo was also like someone asked John Powell, like, can we put in the thing here? And so that's how that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are always the things that I want to know is like, was that on purpose? How did that get there? I just find that
how did that get there? I think is like a great question. Like that could be a question forever because there are so many individual choices that you can ask that about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I second that. And the last question is, what is a score or soundtrack that you're fond of besides anything Star Wars?
Oh, besides anything Star Wars. Well, I have a scores playlist usually. And when people are like, oh, like your favorite composers, it's gonna be John Williams, but Joe Hisaishi, anything from a Ghibli movie, that is what I'm going for.
If you had to pick one.
Oh God. One track it doesn't have, or one film?
No, one film, basically. And it doesn't have to be your favorite, just at the moment. And, every time you come back on the show, you can revise your answer or add more or whatever. Just anything that you're feeling.
Yeah,
today.
well, because right now I've been listening to the Arcane soundtrack, not the score, so that doesn't count.
It can count. You can do either one.
But I think
tough.
Oh boy.
You can give
To
more than
pick-
one answer if you need to.
To pick one,
You
one
can give
Ghibli
two.
movie. Yeah. I'm gonna. Oh, good lord. Okay. I mean, the one that I probably listen to the most is Howl's Moving Castle, but the one I find most interesting is Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind. Also,
Both by
this
Joe
is just
Hisaishi.
yeah. And I'm just gonna, just a quick plug. There was a video, there's actually several on YouTube about how Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind and The Force Awakens are the same movie, shot for shot, and it blew my entire mind.
Oh, wow. Okay. I want to put that in the show notes if I find it.
Yeah. Well, Dave Filoni has talked about how he based Ahsoka directly on Princess Mononoke.
Oh.
Yeah, like down to how she runs and the white wolves and like all kinds of shit, whatever. But I hadn't know that before, and I was looking for stuff about that, and then I saw people going, "Hey, Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, and the Force Awakens have literal shots that are exactly the same, and not just a couple, like a lot." And it kind of blew my mind away. So that's a fun and cool thing. But yeah, the music in Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, I think is just really interesting. And it's always just, it's kind of like an interesting electronic music also. And it gives the story just this vibe that's just so different from your other fantasy epics in general. Yeah.
I haven't seen that movie, so now I want to.
Oh my god. It's all the Ghibli movies are on HBO Max. Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind is the first one, and it was technically made even like before Studio Ghibli was established, but it was Miyazaki's like first one. And here's a cool and fun fact that I didn't know before, like maybe a month ago, was The Last Unicorn, which is another great, amazing old animated movie. You know how a lot of American animation, they outsource to Japan or they outsource to Korea. They, I think that's a Rankin and Bass movie. They outsourced the animation to a Japanese studio that basically went defunct like right after that, and all of the animators were the ones who went to go work for Studio Ghibli. So one could say that one of the first Studio Ghibli movies also was The Last Unicorn, along with Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind. It's just cool.
Interesting.
Just cool and fun facts there. Anyways, yeah, I'm
you know so much about like the media world, so it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm specifically animation. I'm crazy about, but yeah, yeah, I'm gonna probably go with the Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind then.
Nice. I like it. Okay. And last but not least, where can people find you and your like many, many projects online?
Yes. So I am online at Klaudia Says, Kaludia Says. It is a deliberate misspelling of my name. And I am the co-host of a gay Star Wars podcast. We're called RuPalp's Podrace.
I listened to your episode about Wikipedia.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that was my co-host Ollie talking with the supreme leader, basically mod of Wikipedia, which is really cool. And yeah, so we're like at RuPalp's Podrace on pretty much anything. We're on any podcatcher. We just released our Padme episode, which is talking about Padme in general, and also the latest book, Queen's Hope. That podcast, yeah, we talk about like the latest releases, but then we also play crazy games from shit we find on the internet. So, and curse each other with it. The biggest one is Name That Ship. That's what we're known for.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, we go on because there are so many Star Wars characters. Basically, some of my co-hosts discover that you can find the most cursed pairings ever. It's not just like, oh, fan fiction is there. There's cursed fan fiction. Yeah, everybody knows that, but it's like specifically within Star Wars, it's like spinning a wheel. So they will go find something, or people will send it to us, and then we have to guess like who the characters are, and it's a very fun and crazy time. We do it every episode.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it's feels like being hit over the head with a brick sometimes. And we play other fun little games as well. We started actually last year when the Bad Batch started. So if you like listen from the beginning, it's going to be our like watches through the Bad Batch. And we did all episodes about the High Republic and whatever. But anyway, that's where you can find me. I also have a Supernatural podcast. I decided to rewatch all of Supernatural with my other RuPalp's co-host, Ollie.
because I hate myself. And I think that the two of us suffering for other people's enjoyment is funny. And the premise is basically just that we're watching it so that no one ever has to ever again. So you can listen to it and never watch the show because we will tell you all of the horrible, cursed information.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
and,
enticing. I mean,
yeah, it's a wild and fun time. It's called the Mystery Spotcast.
awesome. I'll put links in the show notes to everything.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I spend most of my time on Star Wars TikTok, but I'm around, so
Cool.
thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. And listeners, you can follow Star Wars Music Minute on TikTok or, podcatchers as well. All of the usual places. If you want to leave a voice message, I might play it on the show. You can do that at starwarsmusicminute.com/comlink, and you can just record a message directly from your browser. You can re-record as many times as you want. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. We are getting into minutes 41 through 45 next week, which will be a deep dive into Chicken in the Pot. So that will be awesome. And yeah, may the Force be with you. Thanks for listening to Star Wars Music Minute.